Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Pdocs Podcast with your host, Tony Hang. Welcome back, listeners. My name is Tony Hang, reporting with Pdocs Podcast. I am excited again to meet everybody here tonight on this glorious day. Today is October 7th, and as a part 2 of our series of Omaha Grainbelt, today we get an opportunity to speak to Mark Evans of the UK. And with further ado, we're going to get this podcast started right away. Let's get him on the line.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing, Mark?
Hi, Tony. How are you?
Well, I'm doing okay, man. I'm very thrilled to be chatting with you today. It's been a couple years. Last time I saw you, we were in Vegas with Mike Tyson, and we were having one heck of a time at the gala.
Oh, every time I come to the States, I have a good time. I'll be honest. I was over there for the AU convention in 2013. I've been a couple of times to Vegas for the gala with Fred. And every time I come over, it's nice to catch up with old friends, but it's also nice to meet new ones. So, yeah, pity we couldn't get together again this time, Tony. I was a bit disappointed. But anyway, what can we do? It's a situation we've got to deal with. How are you anyway? Definitely all right?
Oh, man, we're doing okay. We're hanging in there. And just like you said, it's, life is full of punches and different kind of issues, and we just got to work around it to make things work. And it's another reason why we want to do this podcast today, because we know that you're a feature breeder at the Omaha Grainbelt race this year. And we wanted to kind of give the viewers a little bit of information about Mr. Mark. Now, I do have a short list of questions I'm going to throw at you, okay? I hope that's okay.
Yeah, no problem. Fire away.
All right, so we're going to get this show started right away. There's a lot to talk about. Mark has one heck of a history, and I hope you guys got your listening ears on today, and hopefully you and I can catch some great tips from Mr. Mark. But let's start with the first question here. Mark, can you tell us a little bit about your pigeon background? Example, like, how did you get started into pigeons, and what were your first birds? Can you give me a little history about that?
Yeah, I've had pigeons since I was 8-year-old. I think the main reason I got into pigeons, when I was only a little lad, about 6, I was sent round to a neighbour's house, and the neighbour was called Robbie Barker. I used to call him my uncle Robbie, although he was no relation. He was just a babysitter, and he used to take me in for a few hours while my mum went to work. And the old guy had pigeons, and all he used to do was take me up to his pigeons for afternoon and spend a bit of time around them. And I was fascinated from 6-year-old. And he even realised how keen I was. It got in the end where when I went round, I was straight away, can we go to the pigeons? Can we go to the pigeons? And this was like at 6. He remembers it probably clearer than I did. And from that day I was hooked. And then when I got to 8-year-old, I asked my father if I could have my own pigeon loft in my own garden. And he said no. And I just kept pestering him while he gave in and said, well, look, you can have some pigeons, but he says the first time you don't look after them right, or the first time they're neglected, then pigeons are out and you're never having them more. So he says, if you're having them, you look after them. So that was my first year pigeon racing at 8-year-old on my own. Now, my father had pigeons. He didn't have them at this time when I was 8, but he had them prior to that and packed up. So he did know a little bit of history about how to look after pigeons. And all the way through my 8 and 9-year-old age, he was letting me do the pigeons on my own. But he was telling me exactly what to do. And my first year racing was in 1972. And I won 9 young bird races that year. And that's the worst season I've had to date, to be quite honest. So that's how I came to come into pigeons.
Wow.
The pigeons at the time, once a young lad gets pigeons in our area, I don't know, it's like over in America, but in England at that period of time, anybody starting up, everybody in the club wanted to give them 2 or 3 youngsters to get them started. And I thought my dad were a little bit hard and cruel at the time, because he said, oh, you don't want them. If you're going to do the job right, we're going to have to get you some better pigeons, some good pigeons, what you'll win with. And at the time, we bought he bought me some Carl Herman pigeons, which come in from Belgium, a guy a lot of people had never heard of. And we raced them pigeons right up to 2001, actually. Carl Herman died in 1975, so once he died, there were no more originals, but we worked the family around them, and then pigeons kept us at the top for over 20 odd years. There were very, very good pigeons, but to be honest, Tony, very, very good sprint pigeons. We race where we're situated in the northern part of England, in Yorkshire. We get about 200 mile to the south coast, and then once we get to the south coast at 200 mile, with a 100-mile jump then into France over the English Channel to 300 mile. And what we found, the Herman pigeons we had were fantastic pigeons up to that coast at 200 mile. And they put us in so many records, it were unbelievable. With nearly every federation in the area, as they were started up and shutting down over the years, fanciers starting to run away because they didn't want the competition. It didn't matter what they did. It didn't matter if we were in the east, in the west of the club, in the east of the club, the north of the club, the south of the club. Them pigeons at sprint level up to 200 mile were unbelievable. You couldn't touch them at that period in time. But as I say, once Carl died in 1975, they started to get a little bit thin on the ground there. And the problem we had then were trying to find something to cross into them to keep that speed there without getting too inbred. You know, I don't mind inbreeding, but you can't get too inbred. There's a fine balance in both. You don't want to outbreed too far, you don't want to inbreed too far. And unfortunately, we haven't got the tools at that time to work with. So they were good pigeons, but that's the background of where I started.
Well, that's pretty cool, man. So your dad was kind of like he knew pigeons the whole time. He never really talked about it, and when you got into it, he just kind of lifted you up. And was he a big part of your racing career too? You would say as a junior?
He was, yeah. He was a bit of a strict teacher, to be quite truthful, you know. And one of these, he wouldn't get involved and do it, but he made sure I did it right. And he says, you know, if you want to win. And originally at that time in 1972, when I was only 8 and 9 years old, you know, it was like I only flew as Mark Evans then. And then as time went on, I realised how keen he was. He was as keen as me, and especially when he realised how keen I was and wanted to win. And not just win, I wanted to better myself all the time. And, you know, getting seconds and thirds, I was disappointed if I didn't get the red card. And to this day, I still am. Funny enough, I was talking to my wife only recently, and we were talking about one-off races, and somebody had mentioned how they'd got second in the RPRA one-off race only about 2 weeks ago here in England with 100% one of my bloodlines. And when I come off the phone, and she says, you know, you sounded excited when you were talking to him, but you don't sound too excited now. I says, it's because he's got second. I says, I want that red card. I says, you know, second in a race is not good. It's like two horses running side by side and one gets beat nose. Nobody wants to know what the second one's called. They all want to know what the winner's called. And I think that drive is what's kept me pushing to make sure I have the best. And if I ain't got the best, I look for the best. And, you know, I'm not satisfied until I do.
That's great. It's always pushing yourself to be better and growing. And as you can tell, the revolution of pigeon racing is changing year for year. Everybody's getting better. There's new systems, new technology, new pigeons, and to try to win it every year. I mean, that's a normal person's goal, right? I mean, just to get better.
Yeah, well, you know, this is the thing. Once you're at the top, it ain't hard getting to the top. It's hard stopping at the top. And as I say, the worst season I've ever had in my life when I'm first. And, you know, it's just got better and better and better. And then it got in the end where, I know it sounds a bit big-headed this, but when I was racing at club and federation level, it got where I was starting to lose interest, because even on the race day, the pigeons we were racing were only racing like 16 widowhood cocks, old bird racing. And as they were coming in, well, many a time we were getting half of them together, if not more. And they were just dropping in straight after each other. And I was sort of saying, oh, he's another first for that cock, another second for that cock. And I was saying this to myself without even having the clock read to see if we'd even won the race. I was that confident that way they come. You knew when they come, nothing were going to touch them. And, you know, it does get a little bit complacent then where you lose interest in that. So that was one of the reasons I was looking then more to fetch the middle distance pigeons in, and this is why, which we'll talk about in a bit, why I visited Gaby Vandenabeele and fetched middle distance, because I've done everything in this country at club, fed, open race level. I just wanted to move then into classic and nationals and prove that I could do it again, but with long distance pigeons, middle distance pigeons, rather than just sprint. And once you've achieved something, all you can do then is push for a bigger goal. And sometimes you can get carried away a little bit by, and with big birdage. And when I say to people sometimes, when you're looking at people's performances, don't always go with them who's winning out of 20, 30, 40,000. It doesn't really mean a lot. You've got to analyze every race separately. And, I would rather have a winner in my loft what's won out of maybe 400 or 500 pigeons out of France at 4,500 mile racing home in an head, north-east wind, cold all the way, overcast, rather than buy a pigeon what's won out of 22,000 doing 1,900 blowing straight into the loft and winning it on a trap. So, every part of pigeon racing to be successful is analysing everything to the bare minimum, and don't leave a stone unturned to find the best results and why they're the best results. And again, you got to be careful when buying pigeons that they're not just winning in his loft. This was the beauty of Gaby Vandenabeele. I did study him for 10 years prior to going over, and what I liked more than anything was not that his performances were getting better and better in Belgium as I watched him. He'd gone from a provincial winner going through international stage, and I could see he hadn't just won the national, he could see he was going to win plenty more, which he did. But what I liked about him, he'd had several sales in Germany, and the people who were buying him out of them sales were also putting fantastic performances up. So they were flying under different circumstances, different feeding systems, different loft management in different areas, but they were still getting same results. And that's the difference in a good pigeon or just a good loft. And this is what you got to be careful with.
I think you nailed it right there. I also have seen that in the past, just studying pigeons. Some handlers are just so good that they'll take an average good pigeon and make it a super pigeon. But that same pigeon in a different loft that maybe's got a different system might not fly the same. So when you get a family of birds that can fly all sorts of handlers, all sorts of feed systems, all sorts of weather, that's when you got some good pigeons, right?
Yeah. Well, this will be concern a little bit when I were in partnership for a while with John Miles from Canada. And then John wanted to move down into Florida to what they call, I think still call it Little Belgium down there, which is the Spring Hills area.
GHC,
and,
yes.
And my concern was the Gaby pigeons, what had really put up outstanding performances for us here in the UK, were all in dull days, cold days, headwinds, completely different to what the racing was going to be down in Florida. The humidity sky high down there, there's a lot of sun, a lot of fast racing, totally different to how we raced them in the UK. And I said to John, I'm not sure how these pigeons are going to handle that. I says, I hope they do, because I'm sending pigeons over to the $1 Million race in some city, which again, is going to be hot, completely different climate to what we have here in the UK. And what, well, not surprised me, but pleased me, I would say. It didn't surprise me because they seem to win wherever they go, but more pleased me than surprised me was that they did it. It were equal performances, and same going back into Sun City. It's the $1 Million race is probably the only big race I haven't won. But saying that, I've had a second and a third out there with my pigeons. And when I was second, it was with the winner, but beat on the trap, unfortunately. Can't take it away from the lad who won it, but it robbed me about 50,000 English sterling that by going in second rather than first, but that's pigeon racing. So, no, it is. It's just analysing everything. And a prime example I could tell you, I was racing in a partnership loft here in the UK, and for 2 seasons we hadn't raced. There were a bad disease, foot and mouth, here in the UK. So the racing carried on, but it were only inland that stopped us racing out of France. They wouldn't let us take the pigeons into France for liberation. So for 2 seasons we'd no French racing at all. And then all of a sudden they opened it back up. And the first race of the season, there was 12,921 pigeons, just short of 13,000 pigeons. And we put our team of pigeons in. And at that time, the partnership loft was sat in the southeast section. Now, at the time, what you've got to try and explain what I'm trying to tell you here, our country, the whole national country, is racing from one coast east coast to west coast, south coast upwards. Now, then it's split into 4 sections. So you have 2 southern sections, east and west, 2 northern sections, east and west. Now, on that day, them pigeons went up in a north-west wind. So we knew with a north in the wind, it was going to roll half of them pigeons out straight away, because nobody flying 100 miles behind you is going to beat you. So straight away, you can cut that birdage of 13,000 down to 6,500, because all you're doing is competing against the bottom half of the country. And then, because there was some west in the wind, you can roll all the pigeons what are in the west out. So there again, our section were down to 3,000 pigeons. So really, that's all you were competing, because the other 3 sections, because of the wind that day, had no real true competition to try and beat you. So when you get down to the 3,000 in your section, I did say to Gary Dakin, who we're racing with, I says, Gary, he says, oh, it's going to take some beating this today, 13,000. I says, Gary, there's only 3,000 in our section roughly. I says, they're the ones we've got to beat. Now, I says, out of that section, how many are good enough to win a national out of France today in an headwind and perform to win? Well, when you think about it, Tony, you're thinking out of them 3,000, there are only probably 1,000 capable, bred good enough, under good management in that area to beat. And that's how easy it was. So you wasn't flying against really 13,000, although the result said it. All you were doing was flying against around 1,000 pigeons, what were good enough to win that national that day. And we finished up first, second, fifth, and seventh out to just short of 13,000 pigeons.
Wow. That's some incredible competition, man. We're talking basically the whole country is racing against each other. That's basically what you're saying, right? Split into 4 sections.
Yeah. Well, they have over the years, because there's, don't get me wrong, there's more losers than winners. They always will be. The national isn't as good as it used to be, for the reason I think is because they've split them sections several times. So now I'm not sure exactly how many sections. I think about 10 sections now. But it was a lot better when there was just 4 sections. And don't get me wrong, if you're in a section where the wind's against you that day, I'm not saying you can't win, but it's against you. And all you can do really on them days is fly for your section. And it's a hell of an honour anyway to win your east part of country, west part of country. It's still an honour, because you're talking some good fanciers around, whatever the birdage is. If it's 12,000, it's split roughly about the same. So you had about 3,000 in each section anyway. So it's still good competition.
Very nice, very nice. All right, speaking of pigeons, let's talk about pigeons. When I first started racing pigeons, I would open up a magazine, and how I actually came up with your name, Mark Evans, is because I saw this bird by the name of Shaddle. Now, Shaddle is definitely a foundation pigeon of yours. Can you tell me a little bit about Shaddle? Because I know that a lot of the listeners now, that name Shaddle does ring a bell. So let's talk about Shaddle.
Yeah, well, we're going back to what I said earlier. We were racing. Me and my dad were racing the Carl Herman pigeons, and as I say, he came in partnership with me. So it went from Mark Evans to M&D Evans, and that's why the M's before my dad's name is Dick Evans. So obviously, people have always said, well, we thought the M were for your father originally. I said, no, that's how it become M&D rather than D and M. You'd expect father to come before son. So anyway, time went on, and I did lose a little bit of interest around the teenage years when a few girls come on the scene, and it's like when you're a teenage lad and your mates are all after girls, and so are you. And so I did lose a little bit of interest, and I sort of left my dad a little bit for a couple of years to let him do as he wanted with the Hermans. And I didn't give up with the pigeons, but I didn't sort of race. I left him to do the racing. Anyway, then, once I got settled down a little bit and got myself married, I said to my dad, well, look, I'm interested to keep going back in pigeon racing, but I says, I don't want to go back down the same road as winning at Club and Fed, inland racing. I says, I want some better pigeons for classic and national racing. And he says, well, I don't know where you're going to get any of them. So I said, well, to be fair, Dad, although I haven't been racing with you, I haven't took my eye off the ball, you know what I mean? I've been watching. And I said, I've been watching a fella called Gaby Vandenabeele in Belgium. And what I used to do, Tony, I had a bit of an advantage on a lot of people in the UK, because now the internet, you just type somebody's name in or type in whatever you want to type in, and up it comes and gives you all the information you require. you know, to find good pigeons back in them days, in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, you had to go over to Belgium and look for them. And what I used to do, I used to have all the magazines sent over. I used to have a German magazine, a Dutch magazine, and a Belgian magazine sent over. Now, don't get me wrong, I can't read any of them languages, far from it, but what you could do is make out who was winning what by the performances. And with a Belgian magazine, I did spot the name Gaby Vandenabeele, and I watched him for 10 years. And then when I would come back into the sport a little bit back to my dad, I said, look, you know, I've found these pigeons. I said, they're not cheap. But I says, I'm interested in them. I says, I'm going to go and buy some, or I'm going to look to buy some. I says, do you fancy coming in with me? Because I more or less said he could have the ermine pigeons, what we'd raced at that time, so I'd more or less give him them. And he says, well, I'm not interested, because even then he was in his 60s. And he says, no, but he says, I'm happy to come over and have a look. If you want to go, I'll come with you. So anyway, I arranged to go over to see Gaby Vandenabeele after watching him for nearly 10 seasons. And I changed actually 8,000 English sterling into Belgian francs. It wasn't the euro then, it was Belgian francs. And my intentions were to go over and buy some, put the basket in the car and come back. Now, my biggest shock was that when I finally got talking to Gaby, well, I say talking to Gaby couldn't talk any English at that period of time. It was his daughter who were doing the translating for us. Over the years, he has learned to speak English, a little anyway. And anyway, I says to his daughter, you know, I'm interested in buying pigeons. And anyway, Gaby's rambling on in Belgium, which I hadn't a clue what he's on about. And what his daughter were explaining was, you know, there's nothing for sale. He's got a 3-year waiting list. The earliest you could have any was in 1995. Now, this were in 1992. So taking 8,000 English sterling with me were a bit of a waste of time, really. But anyway, I left him a deposit. I was so impressed with the pigeons that day. My intention was to probably buy 12, 14, 16 pigeons. I was that impressed. I agreed to spend 36,000 English sterling with him. Now, 36,000 English sterling is a lot of money now. It was certainly a lot of money back then in 1992. And I left him a deposit, and I purchased, or ordered, I should say, 54 direct from him. And they were all of his main pigeons at the time, which was obviously Turbo, Wittenbill, pigeons what are long gone now. Anyway, what I said to Gaby, look, you know your pigeons better than me. I says, I'm buying 54, so I'm expecting, you know, a more or less a full loft full, really, you know, a full team of his breeding loft. And I says, I would like, if possible, something out of the old Klein and Cock, which was the bee's knees of his loft at that time. But unfortunately for me, I placed the order, but when it come to my order, Klein had finished breeding the year prior to 95. Anyway, I went over in 95, and as I say, I left most of the selection to Gaby. I just made sure I got some out of Turbo, some out of Wittenbill, pigeons like that. Excuse me. And anyway, then when we come over in 95 to collect these pigeons and pay the balance on them, I did say to him, I says, there's a dark pigeon there in the basket, Gaby. Well, speaking again to his daughter, I says, is that same way as a pigeon called Amokachi, which were a good pigeon for Gaby Vandenabeele at that time? Anyway, Gaby says, no, it was nothing to do with Amokachi. He says, there's nothing there around the Amokachi bloodline. It's because of the age of them. He says he was keeping them for himself. So I says, all right. I says, me being a little bit probably cheeky at the time, I said, I'm not being funny, Gaby. I says, I have actually waited for a year for these. I said, I'm spending £36,000 with you. I says, and it would be very disappointing to me to have nothing related to Amokachi. Anyway, by that, he went into his breeding loft and he come out with 2 dark youngsters, and he put them on a corn bin, and they were about 28, 30 days old, and he put them on top of his corn bin lid. And he says, they're full brother and sister to Amokachi. And I says, I can take these, buy these. He says, no. He says, you take one, I keep one. And by that, my dad turned around and he says, we'll have that one. And he didn't give me a chance to even say a word. And then when we got in the car coming home, and I says to my dad, what made you pick the cock out of the 2? He said, well, while you were haggling with Gaby, deciding what you were going to do and what we were going to do, he says, I was watching the pair of youngsters, and he says, that young cockbird there, he says, all he kept doing was watching you as you spoke. watching Gaby as he spoke, and then back to you as you spoke. So he says he obviously has got some brains somewhere. And that turned out, Tony, to be Champion Shadder. And he was one of the cheapest pigeons out of the team of 54. You know, they were priced differently at that time. And he come over as one of the cheap ones. And this is what I often say to people, you know, sometimes it isn't actually the expensive pigeons what always breed the best. You've just got to have that look on your side. And obviously we had the look when Shadder come along.
And that since then, that particular pigeon is now in the backbone of a majority of the birds that are winning for you today. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, to put in the picture, when I fetched the 54 over, and it became a bigger task than I thought it was, because my intention was to try and get myself about 6 pair out of them, which would be what I would class as super pigeons. You know, I didn't want a pigeon just breeding a winner out of, you know, breeding 8 youngsters and getting 1 winner. I wanted pigeons what were breeding winners in every nest. I'm not saying 2 winners in every nest, but at least if you breed 4 youngsters through the season, you wanted 2 in the prize cards. And so when I fetched them over, what I did, more or less, the first year, I just left them in a loft of their own and let them pair. Most of them paired themselves up, and providing they wanted to win bred, and I looked at the pedigrees and thought they were all right. You know, as many winners as I've bred, Tony, I'm no Superman. I can't look at a pigeon and think, oh, that's going to breed winners. It's all trial and error, and there's the basket what tells the truth. So all we could do really was, a lot of these pigeons have paired themselves up the first year, so I thought, well, that's going to make it easier for me. The ones what hadn't, I did pair up. And all I did then for 2 or 3 seasons was swap them about, changed every hen with every cock, and analysed the breeding of every pair. And my intention, as I say, was to try and sort the best, probably 12 out of the 54. Well, as it turned out, I whittled them down, and I finished up with 22. And out of the 22, there was no way I could thin them out anymore. Them 22, whichever way I crossed them, they're just bred winners. And once I'd got to that stage, that were in 2001, I never looked back, because the percentage of winners just coming back every time anything went in his own loft or anybody else's loft, the percentage of winners were well, even staggering to us. And we were a big believer that we'd bought some good products.
Well, but, that's...
as I say, going back to Shadder, he was just one of them. There were many pigeons in there, the Jester and Carry, which many people will see back in the background of some of my pigeons. Bennington's in there, you know, all the old lines, Rolls Royce, he's in there. You know, all them pigeons, they all come out of the old original stuff. And as I say, we Shadder, he was a little bit lucky in a sense that the first year I paired him up to an hen what did come over to Gaby, she never laid. So I seemed to waste him for a year, because she kept going up nest, looked like she was going to lay, and I keep persevering, thinking, well, you know, she was probably one of the later ones of the batch, so she probably hadn't matured enough, really. So I persevered with her and lost a season, so that was the first season. And then at the time, I had a very good silver toy hen, which had bred winners, but were getting old. So I thought, well, I'll try her to Shadder. And I struggled. I only managed to get a couple of eggs, so I wasted him the second year. And to be honest, Tony, it took us till about 4-year-old before I realised, hang on a minute, this pigeon's all right. He's breeding some fantastic pigeons. But it took me 4 years to find out that. And then after that, I had the opportunity to work with the better hens what had shown in the loft. And, it was just staggering then. He just seemed to produce winners with every hen he went with. And, you know, it got a bit of a joke round here in our local area where they used to say, oh, take a fantail. Which I don't know if you know what a fantail is.
Yes, sir.
In America, it's like a white dove with a fantail, and people just have them in the gardens. And people used to say, "Oh, take a fantail down and put it with Shadder, he'll breed winners. He's that good." And to be honest, the winners he has bred are unbelievable.
Now speaking of that, okay, so now we talked a little about the history of Shadow and the history of the Gaby birds. Let's just talk a little bit about racing, and then we'll get right to the auction birds. My question is this: what do you specialize in, Mark? Are you an old bird flyer? Are you a young bird flyer? Can you talk just a little bit about either or, and just what kind of system you run on both racing olds and young?
Yeah, well, going back in the times when I raced with my dad, we used to just race 16 widowhood cocks, old birds. And then that was maximum team of 16. In the latter couple of years I raced with him, we doubled the team to 32. mainly because there were a lot of races on days where there were like 2 or 3 races on the same day, so 16 didn't go very far, if you wanted to send in 3 different organisations on the same day. So we did up the team to 32 winter woodcock. Now, as young bird team, we used to have about 50 to 55 young birds. And to be fair, Tony, we never had a problem winning with these pigeons, because I'm a big believer that quality will always beat quantity at any time. So, providing you've got quality in there, you don't need to breed a lot. And I once had a top fancier, I won't mention his name, once come to our loft, and he saw our young ones pecking around on the garden one day, and he says, "Oh, they're a cracking team of youngsters." He says, "Don't look many." I says, "Oh, there's about 45. So he says, "Is that your first team or your second team?" I says, "It's only team." So he says, "Oh my God," he says, "how do you cope with all them?" He says, "I have to breed around 150 a year."
Wow.
To finish up with about 20. And straight away, that just tells me he's got a big problem with his breeding loft, because obviously you don't have to breed that many. Now, as times have gone on, Tony, it has altered. I race in a partnership loft now, and I don't always get, I don't get all the say what happens. So I just sort of play, we both have as equal share of what goes on. And every loft I've gone into have all kept bigger teams than what we did, me and my father. And mainly because, competition has changed. We've a big problem here in the UK with hawks. So that can annihilate quite a few pigeons a year, where we never see. Don't get me wrong, we had hawks around in the younger days, but not as many as there is. There's more now. So people are racing bigger teams now. We usually breed, me and Dave Hawkins, with Flyers Hawkins and Evans, we usually breed around 70 youngsters now, maybe 75. So still not massive outside of a lot of fanciers here in the UK. You get some fanciers, 200 or 300 pigeons. I visited lofts with about 300 or 400 young ones in. But as I say, that's never bothered me. Quality will always beat quantity.
I like that, man. It's quality over quantity. And
Yeah.
during
the first national race, Tony, sorry, I'm butting in. The first national race I ever flew in the UK, I entered 15 youngsters. And it was all new to me. First time I'd ever put youngsters over at Channel at 320 mile. And what made it worse, we knew it was going to be an hard day, and we could have put a few more in, to be quite honest, but we knew the pigeons wasn't going to go up on the day. So we were basketing on Thursday morning, basketing, whatever you call it. On Thursday morning, the pigeons wasn't planned to be liberated in France until Saturday morning. So you knew straight away the 2 full days in the basket before they were liberated. But we also knew, because of the forecast, we didn't think they were going to be up Saturday and maybe not Sunday. Anyway, for that reason, I thought, well, I aren't putting all my eggs in one basket. So we just picked 15 young pigeons out. And they finished up, there were 4,500 in the national, Young Bird National, which the birdage were down again because it was forecast such a bad weekend. And over they went to France. Anyway, they were held over on the Saturday, held over on the Sunday, liberated on the Monday after 5 days in the basket. And what was the worst thing about it, they was liberated in a strong, cold northeast wind, flying 100 mile a channel and then into 200 mile at UK. And we were sat like 200 mile back or 100 mile on the front droppers behind. So we was really thinking this is going to be an hard one for us. We were thinking it's more of a section performance than an open performance, with a lot to beat 100 mile in front of you in an headwind. And going back to the marketing, when we put the 15 in, there were a guy in front of me who put 200 youngsters in that race. And everybody at the marketing shipping area was saying, oh my God, they're never going to beat him with 200. He's got 200 in. And I said, well, to be honest, he don't scare me. I says, I'd rather have my money on my 15 than any of his 200. Anyway, we broke the national record on the first national race we'd ever flown. I was first, second, third, 9th and 14th. I was the first fancier in the UK to ever take the first 3 in the national, 4,500 pigeons. And what made it extra special was we should never have even been in the top 100 places where we were sat up in the Yorkshire area.
Wow. So once again, ruling back to what you said, quality over quantity, right?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the Gaby Vandenabeele pigeons. There's a lot of pigeons. All the British fanciers, they're all into Holland, into Germany. into Belgium, buying every new strain possible. Every time Pippa comes up with some new super strain, off they go buying them. And at the end of the day, there isn't many, Tony, will stand the test of time in the UK. There's plenty what will win short end races, as I say, what we call inland races, flying in the UK. Once they go over that English Channel, it's a different ballgame. You know, we're flying into an island here, and they're liberated usually in one wind, hitting a cross-winded channel into a completely different winded south part of England, coming up further up England, crossing into another. Some of these pigeons some of these races, they can have to deal with probably 3 or 4 different winds from liberation to finish over a 3.5, 400 mile. And what you find with the Gaby Vandenabeele pigeons, and what I find beautiful about them, is that they seem to have the brains and the ability to lift and go up and down. So if the wind turns to help them, they'll get up in the air and use it. But yeah, as soon as it's on the nose, they've got the common sense to get as low as they can and make the best of it. They've got the ability to do that. You know, they're not struggling. They are brainy pigeons, and this is what I think makes them very, very good middle distance pigeons, and they will fly on their own, which is a big advantage. Where, you know, you get a lot of Belgian pigeons coming to this country, and they're all right if they're all flying into one area, what we call corridor flying. You know, and if they're all coming into that area together, well, 9 times out of 10 it's a trapping race anyway. You know, so it's a different ballgame flying channel racing over here in the UK to what it probably would into Belgium. You know, in Belgium, they're racing out of France, same as us, but once they're liberated in a southwest wind, it's probably southwest wind right through France, right through Belgium, and anybody racing in Holland, same way. The wind never changes, but coming into the UK, it will change several times because they've got to cross the channel.
Now that leads me to the last topic, now, which is basically, I want you to tell us about the birds you sent here. I know there's quite some history. You talked about basically how racing is going on in your area, what kind of challenges that they go into, which sounds amazing. I think it's very challenging to find a family of pigeons that can do it all, but to fly a channel, that takes a different type of pigeon. So I'm very excited to see and to hear about these pigeons, and I'm very privileged. We'll be down there to handle your birds and put the birds on live on Facebook here and YouTube for everybody to watch as well. But the last question I have for you today, Mark, is very basic. Is what did you send to us? Can you tell us a little about what some of the birds you sent, and maybe just give us a couple key highlights of a couple birds, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, when Carter first asked me if I was interested in putting a team of pigeons and coming over for the seminar, first of all, yeah, it were a pleasure. It's lovely to be asked, and you know, as much as I do get asked, every time I get asked from anybody, it's a pleasure to be asked, because obviously there's some respect there. And you know, I did say to Carter at the time, you know, if I'm in with you, I'm in 100%. And the pigeons where I'm sending you, I'm going to send you the best. And there'll be probably pigeons what will come out to America, which probably will maybe the last chance. And I definitely know there's a couple of pigeons out there where there's no possibility of them being offered again. You know, it's how it is, the cost of the age, cost of the situation, you know. But I did promise Carter that, yeah, I would put the best team I could possibly put together. Now, I'm one of these, you know, it doesn't matter how good the pedigree is, how well bred it is, you know, how many races it's won. If it doesn't continue to breed winners when it goes in the breeding loft, it has to be eliminated. And it is sad to work that way, but it's the only way to stop at the top. And, you know, it comes back to when I fetched the Gaby Vandenabeele pigeons in, and, you know, I purchased 9 out of Wittenbilk, and out of the 9, you know, I had 6 what had bred winners, but out of the 6, there were only 3 what I would class as supers. So it didn't matter how well they were bred, you know, them pigeons had to be removed from the team. And, you know, they weren't resold either. You know, I'm not one who resells pigeons. You know, at the end of the day, the way I look at it, if they're not good enough for my loft, they're not good enough for anybody else's. And that's very much like the young bird team what's come over. And to be totally honest, the team what's come over for the auction was going to be my young bird team at my partnership loft with Hawkins and Evans. And because of COVID-19, racing were closed down over here. We did manage to get a little bit of racing in at latter end, but it looked at the time when, you know, I'll bring these pigeons together to come to the Grainbelt Classic. It didn't look like we were going to have any racing whatsoever. So I thought, well, I couldn't put a better team together than send me race team over there. And this is why there is 4 in the team which have got national rings on. And the national racing, you're allowed so many rings for one special race. And I got them 4 rings there. So that's the reason they've got them rings on. They would have been flying in September for one special race from out of France at 320 mile. So, the team, to be honest, I couldn't send you a better team. I do honestly believe I've quite a young team in now. I have some old pigeons in there, but a lot of young team, but they really are producing the goods wherever they seem to go. And even the real young pigeons, I've bred off 1 or 2 yearlings, the confidence in them lines, going back to, again, you've got like Strainmaker in there, you've got Cruise Missile in there, you've Bobby Bat in there, you've got even the grandchildren, although they're off young pigeons, the bloodlines of them pigeons you just cannot go wrong with. I'll be totally honest with you. If I wanted to go out today and try and look for any better pigeons, I wouldn't know where to go. And I'm not just saying that, Tony. The results are there to prove it. They've even staggered me how much they've won. If Gaby had said to me in 1995 when I picked them pigeons up, oh, you'll have half a dozen national winners to your name, I'd have thought, oh, that would be nice. I have had now over 100, I think it's about 112, 113 first national winners reported through these bloodlines.
Wow.
It's just unbelievable. The rate they were coming in, one season alone with 26 national winners reported in one season.
That's
I'm
amazing.
probably the only English fancier, and I'm not saying this to be big-headed either, but I'm probably the only English fancier who is selling pigeons back into Belgium and have gone and won the Belgium national more than once. It's not heard of. People buying pigeons out of Belgium into England, yeah, but not the opposite way around. And I have several fanciers now in Belgium buying me pigeons because they realise they can win the Belgium national.
Wow. So, guys, you have heard it right from Mark that these are definitely birds you should not blink out on. Definitely take a look at the birds. They're listed currently right now on New Eye Pigeon, and they will be displayed live on Saturday at the Omaha Grainbelt. So if you guys are flying in, driving in, please, this is going to be one auction that you should not miss. And like Mark said, this might be the last time some of these birds are ever going to come out this way. And we're just very, very privileged to have Mark on the phone here today. One last question from me to you, and I always ask all the breeders, if there was one tip you would leave behind to a new beginning flyer, a totally beginner, Mark, what would it be? One last suggestion for all our listeners that are brand new to the racing sport. What would that be?
I would try and get involved with a top fancier and put yourself out, give free time to him if he'll accept it. Even if it's only 2 or 3 hours a week, go and help him, go and watch him. And it didn't, even now, I've raised pigeons 48 years. Even now, I can go into Belgium and Holland, and they don't have to tell me anything really, but I can just watch what they do. Even just watching them round the loft, you can pick up silly little things. And this is where I'd say to a new fancier, get on board with some good fancies, put yourself out, put free time in, even if it's only asking to clean out. But while you're cleaning out, you will analyse what's going on, you will watch what's going on, and try and learn. Being like an apprentice really. Going for a job, you start at the lower end and work yourself up. And going back to actual pigeons, you've got to get the best pigeons in the world, or try to get the best pigeons in the world, because if you don't, you're working with mediocre pigeons rather than the best. And what I will say to you, you can have the best management in the world, but if your pigeons aren't good enough, they're not going to come. And vice versa. So you want the best management, you want the best pigeons, and you need both. It's like a big wheel, a big cog. If you've 1 or 2 cogs missing, that wheel ain't going to go round right. But as I say, you've got to get out there, you've got to learn off the best. But only take advice off the best. Don't take advice off every Tom, Dick, and Harry, because no, I don't know the like over in America, Tony, but some of these English fanciers who win nothing over here can tell the tale and they can talk pigeons, but the difference is getting out of bed on a morning and doing it.
You're right.
And, it's not easy, I'll be honest with you. To do it right, you've got to have the right pigeons and you've really got to put the hours in. And you've got to get out of bed and put the hours in, put them first. And my pigeons have always come first. And I would say that, if you've got that passion, you'll do that. If you haven't got the passion, well, you're probably in the wrong game. You might need a set of golf clubs. But, if you've got that passion, get out there, do some free hours at a top fancier's loft, or at least go and introduce you to the top fanciers. Try and glean as much information as you can. And just tell him what you want to do. You want to learn the game. And any genuine fancier will, don't get me wrong, and not everybody will, but most genuine fanciers, I've had fanciers come here and they haven't spent a penny with me. They've spent all day with me, took all my time up. But I've been interested because they're interested. Now, if they come with no interest at all, well, it don't bother me. I think they're wasting my time. But if they've got that passion and they're wanting to learn, I'll sit here and talk all day. And don't get me wrong, I'm not the world's best probably, but, I've got results to back up certain things. And, I do say to people, even anybody at the sale who buys me pigeons, any advice they want, just drop us an email. Ain't there a problem? If I can answer it, I will answer it. And same again, if they're willing to take that cost of a phone call, they can always ring me from the States for any advice. Completely different racing. I'll give you, Joe, a different racing out there. I've experienced the racing, been in with John Miles at Florida. But as I say, any advice I could give anybody, I would, definitely.
Well, I thank you so much for your time today, Mark. It's been a privilege. It looks like we're going to have to get together another time to do a more depth about racing and your birds and whatnot. Today, I just wanted to kind of hit a general history about who you are, and I hope all the listeners today, you picked up a lot of goodies because I sure did. One thing that just Mark keeps drilling is quality over quantity, and I know we talk about that a lot, but unfortunately, in the day and age we live in, it's almost like we're drilled with the we got to have more, but less is more. And I just want to thank you, Mark, for your time today. Looking forward to seeing your birds this weekend. And not only that, we're going to try to do a live seminar on Saturday morning at Omaha Grainbelt. Yeah. We're trying to get things hooked up. Hopefully we got their internet and everything's going to work on our side. And if it does, we'll live stream this. And we're looking forward to seeing everybody and you again, Mark.
Yeah, well, I hope it works. It'd be a pleasure. It's a disappointment I can't be over there. But the next best thing is obviously trying to link up on Saturday. I'm disappointed that I aren't coming to see the pigeons, because when the pigeons left me, they were in immaculate condition, but they was only young. I'd love to see them now. I think they'd do me proud. Carter only told me this morning they're looking super, so I can only take his word for it. But I do like to see my pigeons when they've been away like that in quarantine for a good period of time, because they do mature a lot over that period of time. And I would have liked to have seen them live and been out there, but anyway, can't do anything about it, and we'll make the best of it, Tony. That's all we can do.
Well, and thank you so much.
Hopefully, I get the opportunity to come over again.
Oh, I can't wait, man. I can't wait to see you again. We had a blast last time, and I know we'll have a blast another time. And so any questions, guys, definitely, Mark is available through Facebook if you guys have a question to ask him. I will be there live on Saturday to also handle the pigeons. Any questions you guys can shoot through Instant Messenger, or you can even email Mark as well. So we'll leave all this detailed information at the end of the podcast so you guys can get a hold of Mark. But all in all, Mark, thank you for your time. I appreciate it so much, sir. Looking forward to seeing you and your birds soon.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Thank you. My pleasure.
Hey, you take care, Mark. Well, everybody, thank you guys so much for your time today. There you have it. That is Mr. Mark Evans signing off. I just wanted to kind of give you guys a quick update again once about the auction that's going to occur this Saturday. All the birds currently right now are listed on newipigeon.com. You can look at them under the Omaha Grainbelt section. Keep in mind, all the birds will be displayed live on Saturday at 8 a.m. at the clubhouse, at Omaha Pigeon Clubhouse at 8 a.m. At 9 o'clock, depending on the internet and whatnot we got going on there, we will go live with a webinar with Mark Evans. The auction will go live at 10 a.m. sharp. At 10 a.m. sharp, they're going to do a house bid. Now, just to kind of talk about that really quick here, if we have a house bid that wins the iPigeon bid, then that winner, the person that's live, will take that bird home that day. If the person bidding does not beat the iPigeon one high bid, then the auction will continue and it will finish the normal Sunday at 9 o'clock, I believe it is, on Central Time. So keep in mind, you guys have an opportunity. I would recommend, if you're bidding on these birds, bid high on Friday to make sure that you can walk away on Saturday and live one more day for Sunday for it to finish. So please make sure to keep that in mind. Check out omahagrainbelt.com, check out newipigeon.com, and subscribe and like. The Omaha Grainbelt has a Facebook page. Make sure to like them and then like us as well. Other than that, we're looking forward to seeing everybody again this Friday, Saturday for a fun day. We'll be there live for to take a look at all the birds, to handle the birds. If there's any questions, shoot them my way. And not only that, we'll be there live to see the whole thing unfold. My name is Tony Hang, signing off with Pdocs. Thank you for your time. It's been a wonderful night. Thank you.